All right, welcome to another episode of Miami Global Net, where we connect with Miami's international community. Today we have Edyal Harel, founder and CEO of BlueGreen Water Technologies, and is accompanied with Lucia Ross, Chief Marketing Officer. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the show today to talk about what you guys do with BlueGreen Water Technologies. How are you guys doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
So let's dive right in. So tell us, this is a question for you, Am. What is the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
Well, I'd like to follow the good advice of my dad, who always told us as kids, and you'll probably notice further in the conversation that at least two of his kids ended up in the same company, including him himself. A quote from the Bible. We grew in a Jewish religious family in Israel. That I'm not sure if I'm quoting it correctly. It's a biblical Hebrew quote saying that you shouldn't do to others what you hate being done to you. So I think it's a very good concept for life. On a personal level or on a business level, I believe that you should basically do good. We started BlueGreen with that sentiment in mind, and we're trying to see how we can help communities. We started in Israel, then we started spreading our capabilities outside of Israel, and this is very much entangled with everything that I try to do and with everything that we try to do as a company, as an organization, generally speaking, as a community.
Love it. You heard it, Miami. Doing good and being kind is key, in everything and anything that we do. So water, we're talking water and we're talking water tech specifically. So what does water mean for you guys?
First of all, just so that we all talk about the same thing, I'm always a little bit reluctant to talk about what we do as water or water technologies, because up until recently, every time you talked about water technologies, you talked about water in pipes. You talked about engineers, big factories that were treating drinking water or wastewater or desalination plants. So water technologies were excluded to these environments, which are very limited. When we started talking about water, we were having something very, very different in mind. We were thinking about lakes and oceans. And the interesting thing is that although lakes and oceans make 71% of Earth's surface, there has never been any solution tailored for those environments. There are no products that are designed to handle any problem or aspect of these environments. And in fact, very, very little research has been made in that environment. The kind of rule of thumb is like about 5% of the oceans have been explored to date. So you understand that there's much more unknown than known. Actually, the joke is that we probably know about the surface of the moon more than we know about the surface of our oceans. So there's a lot to learn and a lot to do.
So we might find Atlantis after all, if we've only explored 5%.
Well, before Atlantis, I believe we will find many other very beneficial things for ourselves as living creatures on Earth. Again, it's no coincidence that water takes so much space of Earth. Its impact on our life, not just as humans, as animals, any living organism, is tremendous. And to the extent that we know how to treat our water and use those insights, then I think that our life on Earth will be much better. I think water has a potential to improve life on Earth as we know it. And it just takes a lot of dedication, multidisciplinary understanding, and an international approach to handle the problems that are related to our oceans and lakes.
So on the website, You claim that you make water safe. Can you expand on that?
Yes, exactly that. When we talk about water, we talk about oceans and lakes. We started off with the mission to handle problems that are originating in what we call surface water, meaning in lakes and oceans. This is a massive undertaking. Nobody has ever done anything in that environment. And we started off with a single microorganism, which is called Cyanobacteria, which is essentially it's a bacteria that contaminates water bodies all over the world. It's one of the building blocks of life as we know it. And in recent decades, it's been going out of control. It's essentially a water contamination that is, when left untreated, grows out of control. And like any other contamination, it grows exponentially to the point that it occupies the entire water column and creates toxic conditions and hostile living conditions for any other organism in the water, making the water literally unusable and unlivable. In extreme cases, the water turns into what is known in the jargon as a dead aquatic zone. And those are catastrophic conditions in the water. And those problems are not limited to a place or a time. You can find them all over the world. Indeed, 60 million lakes around the world are contaminated. We're talking about 30 million of square kilometers of ocean that are defined as dead aquatic zones. So this is a massive, massive problem that needs a solution. And we decided that we would like to take on that problem. And we did. So fast forward, we have developed a suite of technologies that combined are able to identify the problem at its onset. We can prevent it, but even if it hasn't been prevented, we can remediate it. We can reduce the toxic bacteria in the water column to manageable levels, and we're able to rejuvenate living conditions in water bodies and rehabilitate entire water bodies within a fairly short period of time. And that means we are able to really make water safe again, because we are able to recreate living conditions for microorganisms, for fish, for birds. Indeed, the entire food chain is rehabilitated as a result of the remediation of these waters. And then, of course, you see implications also on human activities that are healthier and better around those water bodies. The economy is, of course, also benefits from those activities and so on and so forth. So this is our mission. This is what we are aiming for.
What is causing this growth of these toxic situations? Is this something that we're doing, or is it a combination of nature itself, or?
So yes to all. Basically, again, cyanobacteria has been here long before us. It evolved. It's one of the reasons why we breathe oxygen on Earth. And so cyanobacteria is basically everywhere. It's in the desert crust. It's in the water. It's almost everywhere. It's the reason why the trees are green. However, under certain conditions, the multiplication rate, or how fast this bacterial community grows, may go out of balance and cause these populations to basically overgrow. It's like cancerous tumor, if you want an example, or like any other kind of environment where biodiversity is completely destroyed. And those bacteria communities are able to change the physiological and chemical conditions in the water to the point that they become very, very hostile. And this happens as a result of many different factors. From a scientific point of view, it's very difficult to talk about a single event that happened in history, but the common science seem to agree that it's a combination of global warming that definitely helps, of pollution that definitely helps, and factors like that that ultimately disrupt the biodiversity in water.
So let's bring it home to Floridians here to Miami. So we have Lake Okeechobee, especially it is used all over Florida, and there's this whole drainage that goes all the way down from Lake O down to the Everglades. So, and Miamians are very familiar with these toxic bloom situations that do the fish kills, and even the West Coast also suffers from overnutrition of the water. So using this example that Miami's can understand better because they've lived it, how do you guys come in?
So we actually started working in Florida in 2020. Indeed, already in 2019, we met Governor DeSantis when he came with heading a delegation to Israel to look for solutions for harmful algal blooms in the state of Florida. In 2020, we already participated in the first round of projects that were the result of the Governor DeSantis Blue-Green Algae Task Force, and we were mandated with remediating and preventing harmful algal blooms in Lake Minneola, which is in the vicinity of Orlando. It's a 2,000-acre land. Now, just for reference, up until then, it has never been attempted anywhere in the United States to remediate, let alone maintain and prevent harmful algal blooms in a lake of this size. Up until then, efforts of remediation were limited to very, very small areas, up to a couple of dozens of acres, maybe. This is a 2,000-acre lake that we remediated and maintained bloom-free, even though it is downstream of a highly contaminated chain of lakes, even during a bloom episode in those lakes when contamination was pouring into Lake Minneola. But as I've explained before, since we were able to rehabilitate what we call the immune system or reestablish biodiversity in Lake Minneola, the lake did not bloom, even though contamination was pouring in, because it was able to handle it completely by itself. Ultimately, we're having discussions, of course, with the Department of Environmental Protection with the aim, with the target, ultimately, to remediate the bloom conditions in Lake Okeechobee. And we're putting up a kind of a roadmap right now that would define the way from where we are right now to the point that we're able to do exactly that.
Okay. And what you mean that Lake Minneola receives toxic water from other lakes is because it's connected. They feed into Lake Minneola, receives toxic water from other lakes. And so do you constantly have to treat the water after you treated it to make sure that it keeps its resistance, or is this like a one time, or how often?
So it's a very good question, and I'm not sure I have a very good answer. Water, every body of water is very, very different, and it changes really, really fast. That's one of the challenges that we're facing when we're dealing with water. Normally, I can say with semi-natural water bodies, as Minneola is, we see those changes taking effect pretty fast in terms of reestablishment of biodiversity, which then allows the lake completely naturally to fend for itself for quite some time. Now, how long is it going to last? I'm not sure. I can say that since we left Lake Minneola, we started in November 2020, we left Lake Minneola, it was, I think, April of 2021. Since then, the lake hasn't bloomed yet. Okay. I would also say that, and you're right, it is the last in a chain of lakes. And the reason we went to Lake Minneola in the first place was that it was earmarked as one of the most problematic ones, being downstream. I'm happy to say that even though still, I think late last year, the whole system was blooming, Lake Minneola, and we weren't even there, Lake Minneola wasn't. And this is due to the fact that the biological conditions in the lake remained such that prevented completely naturally the toxic community's ability to reestablish themselves in the water.
Can you tell me a little bit about how it works? I saw your video. Your website is amazing, by the way. I like the drone shots are I mean, I could just leave it up here and play some chill music because it's awesome. But I saw a YouTube video linked in your website about how you guys are, you pour this, I guess, compound into the lake. I'm sure people may want to know what exactly you're pouring into the water, but how does the process work? I have a toxic lake. You come in with your guys and you just tell us a little bit about that.
So it's a very basic answer to your question. We're using chemicals that are breaking in the water within a couple of hours at a very, very, very low dose. They are being applied surgically in very specific locations in the lake with the aim to create conditions. And I don't think this is the right forum to go into too much technical details, but I'll just say that we are creating conditions that trigger a biological chain reaction within the toxic communities that causes them to undergo what is known as PCD, or programmed cell death. In other words, the entire community undergoes a collective suicide, if you want, which is why within a very short period of time, talking about usually 24, 48, 72 hours, you see the entire toxic community collapses. Now, this is already happening long after the chemical is out of the system. You can't measure any chemical in the water. Again, the dose to begin with is very, very small and applied very locally. And everything that happens thereafter is completely natural. So what happens now, there's no vacuum left in the water. Once the toxic communities collapse, you see beneficial non-toxic communities take over the ecological niche. And then you start seeing all of the different layers of the food chain start reestablishing themselves. This is a very, very basic layer of what we do. But it's much more complicated than that, because the key factor here is, how do you activate this biological chain reaction within the toxic communities? How do you press the red button at the right time, at the right place, to cause this very, very pronounced chain of events that proliferates throughout an entire lake that is as big as that, throughout the entire water column? Sometimes it can be as deep as 20, 30, 40 feet. How do you do that? And for that, we developed a whole suite of technologies that are based on artificial intelligence and deep learning, that basically allow us, using computer vision, to collect very good data out of water in real time, analyze it, turn it into an action plan, and execute it within a very, very short period of time. And the reason is very simple, and that's the biggest challenge probably when we're talking about problems in water. And again, I'm talking about lakes and oceans. I've mentioned this before. Lakes and oceans are a very problematic environment to work with, because they are chaotic, fast-changing, complex biological environments. They are changing really fast. So if you're using the wrong data, or if you're using the data too late, meaning it's out of date, then you're going to fail. You have to be able to understand exactly what's going on in real time and react to the situation. Otherwise, you've missed the opportunity. It just changes that fast. And so we had to basically close this entire circle of treatment that includes not only what we put in the water, but more importantly, how and when and at what frequency and using what dose and what exact location, and be able to answer all these questions in real time so that we get the effect that we want.
And like that, you mentioned that your chemicals they don't stick around, right?
Right.
They're there, they do their job, and then they cannot be found anymore in the water after you do a test.
Correct. So the product, for example, that we're using regularly in the state of Florida, our Laguard Oxy, is based on sodium percarbonate. So the active ingredient is hydrogen peroxide, and hydrogen peroxide is present naturally in water, and ultimately it breaks into water and oxygen, so it doesn't persist and nothing is left in the water.
So you mentioned one of your main services, but I understand you have a new service called Science as a Service. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, definitely. Basically, the fundamental problem that any lake authority, superintendent, or even if it is a local county with access to water for recreation, drinking, or otherwise, fundamental problem that they face is that they don't really know what's going on in the water until it's way too late. If you look at the way the public responds to algal blooms, the public is asked to be cautious about the situation in the water, and if they visibly identify aggregates or scum, green scum in the water, they should alert the local authorities. Local authorities will come, take samples, and perhaps issue an advisory if relevant. For reference, a problem in water is defined as 20,000 cells of cyanobacteria in the water. 20,000 cells of cyanobacteria in water is perfectly clear water. You can't see anything. When the public identifies green scum in the water, it's when bacterial cell in the water, the bacterial concentration in the water is already at the hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions, if not even more. And that means by the time the public is aware of a problem, by the time anybody goes and checks it and sends it to a lab, and by the time the results come back, the public is already exposed to a whole group of different toxins that are very, very problematic to the health of the people and the life of their pets, and definitely the life of other organisms in and around the water. So this is a very, very problematic situation. And part of our solution that we have developed, as I mentioned before, was designed to allow us to understand in real time what's going on in water in order to allow us to respond to an emerging situation in real time. Recently, we decided to expand on our capabilities and provide it as a tool for local authorities to allow them to be able to identify, alert, and perhaps even respond if they choose to, in a beginning of a bloom before it becomes a public health threat. And this is something that is very important to understand, because key to any solution, or even to their ability to be aware of the existence of a problem, is a good monitoring system in place. And that, as of today, doesn't really exist.
So if, let's say, hypothetically speaking, city of Miami or any other municipality has the monitoring system, detects a rise in the bacteria, right? Is this something that they can implement themselves? Like, oh, we need to look, we have a rise, looks, we're going to peak. Can they do that themselves, or they have to have your people or specialists add the chemicals to the water?
It's a very good question, and I will let Lucia elaborate in a second about the details of the plan and how we're working with local authorities. But to your question, the answer is depends on the size and complexity of the problem. So, for example, we were called last year when the floodgates of Lake Okeechobee were opened and contamination started proliferating throughout the state of Florida. We were called for emergency by the Department of Environmental Protection to come and take responsibility over 5 miles of canals and marinas around the C43 canal, the canal that takes water from Lake Okeechobee, 80 miles through Florida and all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And we came there and we were able to remediate marinas across 5 miles of canal within just a few short hours. So together with the South Florida Water Management District and the Department of Environmental Protection, we agreed that we will continue the remediation efforts and ultimately ended up cleaning 40 miles of marinas along the canal, along the C43 canal. It was the effort to treat the marinas was not complicated, was not so big, to the point that we have agreed with the South Florida Water Management District that they can continue the effort by themselves. So when it comes to marinas, small, relatively small aquatic environments, they're definitely capable and equipped to handle these situations by themselves. When it comes to areas that are much bigger, such as Lake Minneola, definitely when it gets to bigger lakes like Lake Hancock, Lake Apopka, or definitely Lake Okeechobee, this takes a whole different level of an effort in order to manage the situation. And there we come with a whole suite of capabilities in the water and above the water that are designed in combination to remediate the entire algal bloom in that water body.
Certainly impressive. Lucia, you mentioned you could elaborate a little bit on how you work with municipalities as well?
Right. It's a 360 science as a service subscription service. And what it is that the whole entire package provides those who manage the water bodies with the tools and the information needed to maintain a healthy system. And what's included in this is remote satellite monitoring, where we track the presence and spatial progression of algae blooms. And we use satellites, drones, UAVs, and we can determine precisely the areas that are blooming and what needs to be treated. And the managers will get a weekly satellite assessment done by our scientific team based on smart modeling. And we can use that to determine the bloom situation, how pervasive it is, and then we can provide an economical treatment plan. So you would, the manager would receive a scientist consultation, and we offer access to our team of experts to help you cope with whatever's going on in the water body. So the scientist can help you respond to an emergency. And if it's an immediate disaster that's going on, we can control that. So if you purchase a subscription, you have up to 3 hours of consultation every month, and you have unlimited email support, and you're guaranteed a response time of up to 24 hours in an emergency situation. And the most important thing about this is you have a prevention and a treatment plan, and it's customized to your specific water body.
Got it. All right. So this would be great for municipalities, anybody really who's in charge of any water body.
Absolutely, because like Edyal was saying, the key is prevention. You don't want to wait until you have a pervasive bloom when you can see it and you can smell it. It's really, I would almost say it's almost too late. We can treat that, but you want to get in there early, because if you have a large bloom, it's going to be expensive to treat, and we probably will have to do more and more treatments throughout the season. If you can catch the bloom before it becomes a problem, and then you just have preventative maintenance along the way, it's going to be far more economical for the manager to keep under control throughout the season.
And I know that we talked about canals, lakes, but we could do also oceans, like you mentioned, like the marinas. Especially here in Miami, we have we have a big river, the Miami River, that opens up into the bay, and that's where we have experienced some fish kills because of these toxic algae blooms. So I think this is very interesting, and I know that we're running
also
out of
red tide monitoring.
Red tide. We forgot about the red tide.
Well, that is red tide in the ocean. It's a cousin. It's called red tide.
Okay. See, this is why we bring the experts, because I don't know. So, but this has been great, guys. I have one more question before we wrap up. I know you guys received the Global Water Award for Breakthrough Technologies. What does that mean for you guys? How does that feel? That's pretty cool.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for people outside of the water community to really see what we do, because it was in the Financial Times and in other industries, that we now have that platform where people know BlueGreen Water Technologies, and they're starting to ask questions. And that's great, because I'm welcoming being able to speak with media from different outlets and tell them more about the company and more about our products. So I think that platform has really helped us grow.
Awesome. Well,
if I can interject,
of course,
I totally agree with Lucia. I just want to add that to us, as an organization, it wasn't just the recognition of how far we've gone, but also about the impact that we were able to create on these vast bodies of water. One of the key factors related to our winning in the prize was our efforts in South Africa to remediate harmful algal blooms in very, very toxic lakes in rural communities. And it's true everywhere, but when you get to these places, for example, Setumo Dam on the border of Botswana, and you're able to truly touch the lives and livelihoods of local people and affect them within a few short weeks, allowing them access to good quality of water, bring back the standard of water that they've lost so many years ago, allow them to have access to healthy food source, which they have lost many years ago, allow them to be able to open a window during bloom times, which is most of the year, because otherwise the water is too stinking, and you don't want to go anywhere near there or even open a window. So that to me is what makes me think that what makes me very proud of what we do. Our work touches so many communities around the world in the most basic way possible, and I think for that we were very proud to receive recognition.
Well, awesome. I mean, this was new to me when I reached out to Lucia via LinkedIn, and she was telling me all about BlueGreen. So it's been very educational for me, and I'm sure for a lot of Miamians who are going to be hopefully listening in. So Edyal, Lucia, thank you so much for jumping on the show and telling us what you guys do here at BlueGreen Technologies, Water Technologies.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.